voice. As a poet, that's all you have. Don't waste them. You spend innumerable hours reworking your poems, searching for the perfect word or phrase, the most effective placement, the most concise, clear, and melodious, or the most sprawling, lush, and cacophonous rendering of your thoughts and emotions. And suddenly, here you stand, mouth open, bereft of the haven of the page, and expected to communicate all this richness face to face with an all too intent audience. No wonder so many of us freeze and gulp, or explode into manic frenzy, or hide in the safe, insipid pathways of rambling anecdote and interminable explanation. Poetry reading, doesn't it make you shudder? And yet, there's a unique pleasure in hearing a poet read his or her own work to a living, breathing audience. When it works, audiences walk away with an understanding of the poetry and context, the personality and physicality of the poet that can greatly enrich their enjoyment of and engagement with his or her oeuvre. How do we arrive at this blissful result? I've spent many years presenting poetry to live audiences, sound poetry, multi-voice poetry, poetry with jazz, and improv poetry. I mentioned this as a background to my personal discoveries about what works best when reading the simple, beautiful artifact of the unadorned poem. There you are, walking up to the podium, poem in hand. I have 7 thoughts for you to consider. 1, don't think. 2, the audience is on your side. 3, what you display is what they will feel. 4, play to your strengths. 5, no excuse will save a poem, but a bad intro will kill it. 6, prepare. And 7, trust your words. To explore these ideas further, number 1, don't think. You have a reading this evening and you're already imagining what will happen when you stand up in front of that terrifying audience of friends and peers and perhaps senior writers or publishers you want to impress, and maybe your children or parents or people from work who've never come to a reading before, and maybe your own teacher and... For me, it is important to be exceptionally well prepared beforehand. We'll talk about that last, why not? But on the day itself, I refuse to think about it. I simply decide to trust my preparation and my work. I've done my best to get ready, and there's nothing more I can do. So I read a silly book. I'm rereading Howard Engel. I love him. Take a bath, fuss over my clothes and hair, turn the music up loud, drink some soothing tea. Fight the impulse to crawl into bed for the rest of April by telling myself it will be over in just 6 hours, 5 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours. The more I imagine what is going to happen, the more nervous I will get, to the point where I'm shaking and breathless, and when I actually get up on the stage, really mess up. This has happened to me. If I instead use whatever tricks I can to ignore the whole thing for the last few hours or day, I'll be much more able to stand up and read well. 2, the second point to remember is that the audience is already on your side. They would not have come to a poetry reading if they wanted stand-up comedy or romantic mush or jolts per minute thrills. The audience knows poetry takes intense, intelligent listening, and that the rewards are subtle and deep. They are here to see you and will be flexible and curious in their reactions. They want to be intrigued. So, when you arrive at the podium, take the time to arrange your papers. Take a deep breath. Look up and around. If the poem allows it, smile. Number 3, and then pretend. Of course you're nervous, everyone is, even after years of reading. What the experienced poet has discovered is, fake it like crazy. The audience will mirror you. If you stutter and apologize and panic when you drop your papers on the floor, your audience is going to suffer an agony of embarrassment for you and with you. They want you to succeed, and the empathy they feel for your distress will build into a feedback loop that fans your anxiety and theirs to higher and higher levels. If you can pretend to be calm and confident, if you can slow down, stand up straight, look your listeners in the eye, if you can see the eyes, and speak into the microphone, they will relax. Their relaxation will feed back to you, and suddenly you too will begin to feel better. The audience cannot start this process. It's up to you. Yes, it's artificial and difficult, but fakery becomes easier with practice. And the effect on yourself and your audience is immediate. Soon, you are authentically feeling much calmer and happier and able to reach out to communicate. 4, which is, after all, the point. How now, brown cow, do you convey your poem? Through words and voice. Focus on these, your 2 greatest strengths. One effective opening is to begin with the poem. Forget rambling introductions and thanks, save those for the end. Let the first thing your listeners hear be your practiced voice saying your most powerful words. Another opening is to gravely and formally thank the organizer for having you. Formality is your friend. And then turn to your poem. Another is to start with the first line of your written out script. Whatever you choose, make sure you can say these first words with absolute confidence and certainty. Silence is better than babble. When the poem is over, count 2 beats before moving or speaking. You want it to hang in the air. Then lift your head, lean back a little, smile, anything to show you've now moved into a more casual space. Now you can say something about the poem. 5. And here we get to the most touchy, the most difficult, the most dangerous part of the whole poetry reading business. Here is where you can most easily kill your reading. One of my friends, an outstanding poet with dozens of books and even more prizes to her name, still cannot resist the urge to preach and ramble and give away the poem, surrounding it with so much guff that by the time she starts reading, you're in a daze. Is it over yet? Can I wait even a minute longer for the bathroom? Sometimes she even explains what's in the poem using the words of the poem before reading it. Nothing will kill a great poem faster. It is interesting to know a bit about where a poem came from. I wrote this while I was digging up my foundations. It's intriguing to hear that a poem about housework read just as well to a peace rally on Parliament Hill. It's good to discover that a poem dedicated to a particular writer uses similar techniques and language as a tribute. But not all of those things. Save one for next time. Comments offer a change of pace, a break from hard listening. They are transitions, but not the reason the audience is here. What you have to say is already in the poem itself. If a poem needs a lengthy explanation to make it make sense, rewrite it. No introduction, and I say this without qualification, no introduction should take up more time than the poem. Worst of all is to apologize. Remember about pretending to be confident and that the audience is on your side? You do not have to convince them. Either your poem will carry them away into an interesting landscape, or it will not. More likely, it will explore some unexpected paths, but not quite complete the journey. Few poems are perfect, so don't apologize, don't explain. Sorry, this is a bit rough. I wrote it in the bar on the way here. Hope I can read the words. All the excuses you have to offer will not save a bad poem, and a good poem stands on its own. Trust your words. Easy for me to say. How does one actually go about doing it? 6, preparation. Your audience has come out for you, and it's your job to respect that effort and interest. You might make mistakes on stage, or you might soar, or both. But if you've prepared as well as you can, they will respect both you and your work, and perhaps even applaud. Preparation consists of the following steps. Pre-choose the poems and order. You can have backups and options, but start with a definite list. Print them out in a large, clear font. I like 14-point Arial and 1.5 lines spacing. If it's a book, insert stickies. Or, my favorite, write the page number of the next poem in pencil below the one you're reading in the book itself. The next step, compose a script, including every darn thing you're going to say word for word. Write it out, on the poems or separately. I keep a reading copy of each book with my script notes in pencil and/or large stickies with alternate intros. Writing out the script helps ensure that you don't have 3 times as much commentary as poetry. You're not here, after all, to practice improvisational public speaking. You're here to reach an audience with your poems. Writing it out ensures you won't ramble or babble. Once you are up on stage and nervous as a bird in a bat cage, it's hard to realize how much time is passing, and even harder to stay focused and succinct and remember everything you wanted to say. It's almost impossible not to and ah and repeat. Perhaps you can remember an instance of this? Among your friends, of course, although never you. I can hear some of you thinking, yeah, that's fine for beginners, but the top writers don't write out scripts. You're wrong. The cues may be subtle and practiced, but notice how the big names all have their poems marked and ordered. How they glance at the page before making just one brief, pungent remark that sets the poem beautifully in context before reading it. They may be confident enough to veer from the script, but the reminder points remain on paper. Only an amateur, or worse, comes to the podium expecting to extemporize. If you're that good on your feet, why not also improvise your poems on the spot? Honor your work and your audience by thinking ahead about the words that will best frame your poems. Then, read through every word of your poems and script with a timer, and make sure the package as a whole is slightly shorter than the time you've been given. Don't skip this step. Reading longer may seem like a chance to, at last, have a sympathetic audience to hear your words. From the audience point of view, it appears unfair to other readers, selfish and boring. We're Canadians. We don't shout out, "Get off the stage!" But we think it. Time is precious. Audience who trust you to stick to your time, listen best. Many people won't come out again if you abuse that trust. Finally, present yourself decently. For those moments, everyone's looking at you. You owe them the respect of appearing, at minimum, clean and orderly. No need to be fancy, although I myself like to give the audience something juicy to look at, like glittery earrings, as entertainment in case they don't like my poems. Costume is great, if you can pull it off. Remember, though, not to overwhelm your writing with glitz. What you wear should be consonant with what you are about to say. 7. And now, we've run out of time. Other topics, what makes an effective reading, how to pace it, how to use your body and project your voice, may be addressed in the coming workshops. There is, however, one last idea I'd like to present. If you do this one thing, any other little twitches or issues will recede into the background. Before you read the poem, repeat the first few words in your head and put yourself mentally and emotionally back into the space you were in when you wrote it. Then, speak it, directly and without flourishes. Just read the words in an ordinary, human way, as if you were trying to tell a friend about something that happened on the way here tonight. Yes, speak slowly and clearly, and say all the consonants. That's what helps the hard of hearing most. But most of all, lift your chin, look out, and enter into a conversation with the people listening. Trust your voice. Trust your words. They'll carry you through.